The body learns its pain and reactive responses, and they become our habitual states of being. One important caveat to always following our inherent body wisdom is to understand that the biological body is wired for survival, and this means avoidance of pain, life-threatening injury, or death first and foremost. Because of this, the body will always take the safest and most cautious route to restoring homeostasis and avoiding traumatic nervous system reactions, pain, or injury. Over time, this safest route wiring can actually lead to an acceleration of threat response reactiveness that will transform into chronic pain in the body, or an overblown fear or startle response to certain events, situations, people, or environmental stimuli. Or it can lead to oversensitivity in general. Research has shown that the body, in an effort to not take any chances at being harmed or damaged, will develop neurological pain, fear, or hypersensitivity responses over time that do not actually correspond to real threat or injury potentials. For example, patients with severe injuries will develop chronic pain in the areas that will remain long after the actual injury has healed itself. This means that there's no longer any actual need to signal pain in the injured area as a signal for rest or a need for non-movement so the body can heal. It's now a habitual pattern to overprotect the area and avoid a new injury. The same can be said of phobias that cause individuals to fear certain events, such as flying or heights, or to be afraid of meeting new people, like xenophobia, fear of strangers. This overreactive fear can be traced back to a stimulus that may have been forgotten in the past, and the body developed an overreactive fear response of anxiety or other symptoms to make certain the person avoided that from happening again. This can also be a possible root cause in chronic allergies, as allergies are hypersensitive reactions to certain substances, foods, or environmental conditions. Chronic pain, fear, or oversensitivity is much more likely to lead to a possible life disability with those who experience severe or catastrophic trauma or ongoing developmental trauma, which leads to PTSD-type conditions, which can really burden the everyday life patterning. These overreactive adaptive patterns are also at the root of our relational avoidance or anxiety responses when we consider attachment disorders and childhood developmental trauma responses. Developmental trauma is a normalized, repeating, dysregulating pattern that's not recognized as outside the normal scope of life. As an example, we could look at a household with chronic anger or a lack of emotional safety, or a parent that was emotionally neglectful or avoidant, where the child was in this environment on a regular basis and it became normalized. The experiences of our childhood have a huge impact on all areas of body response relating to physical responses and emotional and mental belief formation. That's why we need to work in our embodiment practice in the body to locate and understand these complex patterns and habitual behavioral responses, and to literally rewire ourselves into well-being and eventually to bliss. This tendency of the body to overprotect on many levels, unfortunately, does lead to most chronic health and emotional conditions that can worsen over time and progress as the individual perpetuates and reinforces the belief that they're injured or fragile or sensitive to this or that certain situation. Over time, the restrictions from the debilitation or limitation can cause the person to withdraw more and more from a normal range of motion or a normal life activity or life in general. And this can make their world become very restrictive and limited as they overcompensate for these perceived limitations and avoid them. Some examples can be saying things like, I'm oversensitive and I can't function in crowds, or I can't try that new hike because my knee's weak and I'll get re-injured, or I need to distance myself, shut down emotionally, and avoid contact and intimacy when my partner gets too close to me because close intimacy is not safe. Again, this will likely be an unconscious avoidance pattern that we need to become conscious of. The belief creates a reinforcing loop in the pain neural pathways, and new and increased pain signals, heightened fears, or sensitivities can result in debilitating effects, including eventual life diminishment and isolation, disabilities, or total immobility. When a person suffers from a lot of traumatic experiences or injuries in their childhood, there can be a very high correlation to the development of phantom or ghost symptom chronic pain in the body, phobias or startle responses, or emotional sensitivities and allergies that can be devastating to normal life function. The nervous system will most likely be regularly dysregulated in this type of person. In this case, it's necessary to retrain the brain, the beliefs, the emotional responses, and the body's actual neural pain pathways to stop releasing the false pain, fear, or oversensitivity signaling. If you feel you may suffer from these effects, you may need to explore more intensive mind-body retraining and healing that can help you identify the ingrained belief that you're weakened, damaged, or have some debilitating condition that is leading the body to prompt the symptom, the pain, the fear, the sensitivity, or the emotional pattern associated with the unconscious belief structure. The embodiment work we're learning here is a great start to begin to gain self-awareness about how these patterns and learned responses can be present in your unconscious behavioral and belief structures. Awareness and consciousness are the first step to true healing and recovery. Once the belief reactive pattern is healed, the door can open to a renewed and uplifted sense of hope, peace, and eventually to greater pleasure, bliss, and joy as we not only learn to regulate our nervous systems, but to actually move our nervous systems into these heightened, joyful states. We can see that the mind-body connection is a really deep one, and it has to be fully understood if we're going to take back our sense of control over our own well-being, our personal wellness, and our enjoyment of life. Our body is infinitely intelligent, and when we tune in very carefully and learn about how it communicates with us, and most importantly, why it's communicating a certain signal, we can learn so much about ourselves and become more free to harmonize with our higher biological potentials for well-being and health.